not for Lance, Travis, or me. So we're so glad you're here, man. All right, everybody, welcome to Self-Storage Income, the live podcast here at our event. And I am really excited about this opportunity because of who we have with us. So the format of this podcast and how it's going to go. We have 3 operators, but they're not just operators in the self-storage space. Obviously, they're very involved in the industry because of what they do. I have worked with all 3 of these individuals for over a decade. I've seen them buy deals. I've been partners with them. I've seen them acquire, start businesses, and they're all extraordinarily involved, not just with their own self-storage assets, but involved in the industry. We have had meetings and board meetings for over a decade now focused on how to deliver services and how to help independent operators. We are all a part of Store Local and as well as Tenant Inc. And we are all operators and owners. That's important to know, okay? Because it's not just we're talking about the industry. They're not vendors. They're owners and operators first. They all have portfolios, and they're large portfolios. So they really are experts in the space. And I've learned so much from all 3 of them. These are people that when I need advice, when we are struggling, I call and I ask them. When we're trying to understand what's happening, and they'll be honest. They'll say, we're really not sure what's going on. Let's see if we can call and figure things out. They're very well connected in the industry. So this is an absolute pleasure that we get all 3 of them here. So we're going to start out here with a couple introductions, right? Why don't we start out, you guys each, 10 seconds, quick introduction. Lance, we'll start with you.
Lance Watkins, CEO and founder of Tenant, and been involved with Store Local and Storage Outlet, Storage Treasures, and Charity Storage.
Nice.
Dane Elefante, Platinum Storage Group. I'm our COO. We're in 7 states. We manage, buy, develop, pretty much vertically integrated, do everything.
I'm Travis Morrow. I'm the president of National Self-Storage. We run a 30-property portfolio in the Southwest. I'm also the CEO of Store Local.
Travis also manages and operates one of our facilities in Reno. He's done a fabulous job with it. Worked with Dane and obviously Lance. When we got into the industry a long time ago, we were buying small facilities. There was no education, right? There was none of this. There was no podcast, books, everything. We would come together, and that was the whole purpose that Lance, as well as others, started Store Local. It was because we needed to come together to get better and to get help. And that's where we went and searched out others. So it's been amazing to have them here because they've been along our journey with me, my father, and my brother-in-law as we built our companies. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to ask them questions, and we're going to give them each about 2 minutes to respond. Now, these guys are like me. They like to talk. So I am going to try the best to control not just them, but me. We'll see how this goes. All right. The last 2 years has been rough. Interest rates been rising. Where, in a quick snapshot, do you believe the industry? We just got over the busy season this year. Where do you believe the industry is at, and where is it headed? And just, obviously we don't have a crystal ball, but what are you guys seeing on the street and hearing from people? Travis, we'll start with you.
Yes, the last 2 years have been rough, but we've been coming down from an all-time high. And we have been reverting back to normal operations, in my opinion. The capturing of tenants, generating move-ins is, we're having to put some work into it again. The last 2 years, it was just open the doors and facilities were filling up. But now we're getting back to those pre-COVID levels where at some facilities and in some markets, you have to start paying attention and put in the effort to generate those leads and start paying attention to detail from an operations standpoint. Is my facility clean enough? What's my customer experience when they walk in the door? How am I going to convert those leads into actual move-ins? With the 0.5 point reduction, I think we'll start to see things loosen a little bit. I was talking to a gentleman last night at the party, and I think that with that 0.5 point reduction, that gives the buyers a little wiggle room to sneak up a little bit and the sellers to have a little understanding that, we're a little closer. And so we're bringing those buyers and sellers, that gap just a little closer together, which I think will start to loosen up the transaction side of things for the industry. It's always great for our industry when deals are moving, in my opinion. So, it's, tough couple years statistically, but to me it's always been, it was never going to be this good forever, and we have to get back to normal at some point.
Perfect. Love that answer. Dane.
I mean, I think in order to tell the whole story, we got to go back to 2022, and I think you guys have done an excellent job, throughout the course of this event, kind of explaining what's happened with capital markets, what's happened with, rates, what's happened with the broader economy. But I think we have to go back to 2022, and 21 to 2022, we saw unprecedented growth in rates. And, we kind of hit a bubble, I want to say, at about August 2022. And I really feel like we hit a trough at about May 2023. And I think we've been on an uptick since then. But, in terms of markets, I still think you can't look at everything as a whole. But on the whole, our industry is doing very well. I think the economic environment is worse than what we see on the news and what we see in all the readings. I think, you look at even the unemployment rate, they're counting a bunch of people have 3 jobs and don't even have a solid job. But, 2023 was a very strong year for us. We pretty much hit a trough in May and grew through there. And 2024 has been a little bit of a wonky year. I mean, I think you guys saw this too. Q1, it blew up. It was like the strongest Q1 I think I've seen in years. And then the summer kind of ended a little bit early for us. I don't know if that's what all you guys up here have kind of seen, but, we're having to work a lot harder to make more income. But if I were to show everyone just a graph of all of our sites, our actual rent charges for all of our sites, for all of our same store, so no lease ups or anything, we've pretty much gone up, year over year, and we're continuing to grow right now. I'm a little bit worried that July was weaker than I would have expected. We saw searches go down on Google, which showed me that some demand's leaving the market. But counter that with the fact that we just did they just did a 50 basis point, rate drop. And I think there's going to be more. I think we all agree there's going to be more. They got to slow that unemployment growth down. And I think once that starts to happen, we're going to see a lot of demand come back in the market. So if I were to try to forecast what does the future look like, I think it's either going to be flat, or I think we might see another boom if we see another 2%, 1.5% or whatever of rates go down. And housing turnover is completely stalled. So that's going to turn that back on. And if that turns back on, our fundamentals are pretty solid. We're a little bit lower on occupancy than we were in kind of the bubble in 2022, but we're right there, and rates have only continued to grow. All of our in-place rent per square foot has gone up over the last 2 years. So I think this industry is doing very well, and that's considering that all these markets have absorbed unprecedented amounts of supply, right? So that's why I say it's really market specific, because if I'm in a market and there's 4 lease ups, I'm not happy in that market right now if I'm leasing up. But overall, I think those are going to pan out, and those markets are going to come back if the fundamentals are right. And over time, there's just more and more people using storage and need storage. So that's kind of what I'm seeing right now.
Awesome. I agree.
I'm going to answer that very differently. I'm not really concerned about the buyers and sellers, which I know most of you are. I'm concerned about the buyers and sellers in the housing market, and we're going to see a little change there. That 50 basis points is going to affect them more than us because they've been sitting on the fence locked into their homes. We're a commoditized service, and it's very difficult. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult to create demand for our product, right? It's an event or some element in our customer, our tenants' lives that drive them, twice in their life to our product type. And that is what I want to see come back. I want to see those buyers and sellers start moving again and see those fundamentals happen within the marketplace. And then I think we're going to see, a lift. And then guess what? We'll all be doing our thing in our real estate side when that happens.
Can I make one last comment too? Because I didn't really comment on the buying and selling, but we closed on our last deal end of March 2023. And we have been very disciplined. We look at a lot of deals, and everything was underwriting to a 10.8% IRR when we're looking at all these deals. And only recently do I really feel like a lot of sellers are acquiescing. They need liquidity. Like they're kind of at the end of the rope. They either got to refinance or they're just sick of it. They've had 2 buyers drop out and they're like, whatever, I want to price this thing to sell. I think brokers are being more candid with sellers and they're not like selling them the moon when they, so I think you're going to see transactions really pick up, later in
The
this year.
last 30 days, we've seen a big change. We went under contract on 2 deals in the last 30 days, and 6 months prior, not even one. I mean, nothing.
Yeah.
I agree with that. One thing I do want to clarify real quick. Lance is from Newport Beach. He's not a cowboy. Okay, moving on. So,
Hey, my boots are made of horse leather. That's really different.
yeah, I'm sure. Okay, with today's environment, you guys mentioned that everybody kind of agreed a return to normal. When we're talking about a return to normal for storage operators, there's a lot that we're looking on because there's a lot of noise, and we've talked about the marketplace, the buying and selling, interest rates, on and on and on. Let's bring it back a little here. I really want to focus on individual storage operator. I'm buying a facility. I own 2 or 3 facilities. In the market, we had a return to normal. What should they be focusing on? What is the 1 or 2 things that are top priorities? There's a lot of things, but in this market cycle, what are the 2 things that you think a storage operator should be focusing on to be successful? Lance, we'll start with you.
Less demand in the market right now, more competitive rates in the market right now, so less search, meaning that you have to be better at not only finding that customer, but converting that customer. So how easily can you put an offer acceptance consideration in front of somebody at the right time? You should be hyper-focused on that. Then backfill with the tools that you need to do that. Because, again, 90% of e-com is on a mobile device. That's 3.5 inches of space. Customers they're gonna make a quick decision. Take away all those friction points. Make it seamless, because that's when you're gonna make money after you've invested in your real estate. It's moving that customer in, converting them, and then managing them. So you've got to be good at all those things. Backfill with all the pieces to do that.
Awesome.
I think we're in a rate management environment right now, and you got to be managing your street rates, your in-place rates. You need to understand the demand for every product type you have. My upstairs climate is not my downstairs climate. My drive up is not my inside climate. And I might not have a lot of demand for my upstairs right now. So I'm going to be pushing occupancy and using rates to bring in new customers. But then my larger units that are all full, my indoor downstairs climate, I mean there could be a 60-cent, 70-cent difference between your downstairs and your upstairs. So I'm going to take the units where there's clear demand for those, there's lack of supply in the market, and I'm really going to push rates on that.
60 cents a square foot.
Yeah, square foot.
A month or a year?
Like, it could be a difference between, a $200 or $210 unit and a $270 unit,
Got it.
right?
Perfect.
Or even $300.
Dane just said the same thing I did. Offer and acceptance, right? You got to put the right offer out there, and you got to get them to accept it.
But he said it
It's
better.
rates.
But to wrap that up, you can look at your own unit mix, and you know where the demand is.
Yes.
So even if you don't have a sophisticated revenue management system, push the rates where the demand is and back off where it isn't, and fill it up. So you could be playing at the same facility. You can be playing an occupancy game, and you can be playing a rate game. And you have to be doing both right now. You can't go, oh, we're only solving for occupancy, right? If your first story's full, you're just throwing that money down the drain essentially. So
and I think you're right. I think here, Lance hitting a lot more on that front end piece, finding, bringing them in, managing them, you focusing on the difference of different products in different markets, and they're changing, and we see that with vacancy. A normal, right? You saw the charts today. When we say vacancy and demand's lower, we're talking about going back to the normal, which has been a high for the last 20 years. We return to a normal high, not an average, like a normal high at 90%. So we need to make sure that's clear. But that does change. When you haven't had that, all of a sudden everything was full. You didn't really see demand in differentiating in different products, as in units, different product types, right? We're seeing that today. That changes who you're going after and then how you're managing them. Travis.
So I agree with all that you guys have said, but since 2018, and these guys will probably roll their eyes because I've been saying it since 2018 so much that it's gotten us sued. But I've been focused on the modern customer experience. And I look at how I am out doing business with every other business and company that I'm interacting with on a daily basis. What's it like to shop on Amazon? What's it like when I go to the bank? What's it like when I go to the grocery store? Can I whip out my phone, double click and pay? That's awesome. I would love to be able to do that at my storage facility. Those kind of things, out living my life, taking those back to my operations to be able to implement those in my operations makes a big difference when customers are showing up at your facility. And, you know, I talk about the Ritz-Carlton versus the Motel 6 model. You know, when I go to the Ritz-Carlton, I'm not expecting to pay $39.99 a night. I'm expecting to pay what Ritz-Carlton charges me because I want what they have to offer. Well, the same is true, I have found, for self-storage. Lance and I disagree on the commoditization a little bit of our 10 by 10 boxes, but I would argue that in some of my markets with some of our facilities, including the one that I manage in Reno for Lance and AJ, that my 10 by 10 is better than your 10 by 10, and it costs more because of that. It's not only climate controlled, it's got Noki Smart Entry. You can access it whenever you want. You can share digital keys with your friends and family.
You can drive through the building.
You can drive through the building out of the snow. All of these things pile on to create my Ritz-Carlton version of self-storage versus the competitor's Motel 6 version of self-storage. And so have always been focused on how can we continue to improve the customer experience to match what they are experiencing with other businesses all around the world. So Lance mentioned ClickWrap. You know, for a long time when we first started working at Tenant and building out Hummingbird and the Mariposa process, signing a lease online was a big deal. Well, that's already getting antiquated.
Yeah, it is.
Now it's check a box, you just signed a contract. Offer, acceptance, consideration. That's the next phase of where, as an industry, we're going to. Customers will still get their lease, but they don't need to digitally sign it anymore. It's literally check a box, we've got a lease, send me your money, move in.
Reduce the friction.
Yeah.
So there, one thing I want to add, I agree with all of it. The differential between the commoditization is really important because when you look at the box, it is a box, okay? We're not churching it up, it is what it is. But that's not where the value proposition happens. That is not where someone attributes value to your facility. They do it in two locations, physically, your actual asset, how it looks, if you have an office, the office, right, the surroundings, all of that. The next would be online. And there is a difference. And it can be so different that it can really hurt you. I see this all the time. What happens is you have a Ritz-Carlton facility, but then you have a Motel 6 online. So
Hey, coffee beans are a commodity, right?
And look at Starbucks.
Spring. Like you've got $60 a pound stuff and $2 a pound stuff.
So when you get that though wrong, you can't compete. You have a Ritz-Carlton facility, but online, you're running it, you have a Motel 6 experience. Now the thing is, customers don't consciously make a lot of these decisions. When they go online, the seamless, the lack of friction, how it looks, everything subconsciously, the experience is better, they feel better, they make choices faster, and they place value on it. They're not like going and comparing your websites. That's not what I'm talking about, okay? And so when you're looking at this can be a competitive advantage. Maybe you have more of a Motel 6 facility, but then you have a Ritz-Carlton website. You're gonna win, right? You're gonna do really, really good in comparison to those other assets. Commoditization on the actual box, yes. The experience and the facility, that value prop, no. So I kind of agree with both of them. All right, if you're looking today, right now, if you're looking to, buy, to get a facility today, let's say now, let's go all the way back down, you're a beginner, you want to invest in self-storage, okay? what are the 2 things that you need to know or be good at to get in the game? Dane, start with you.
I think I'll kind of start with like my philosophy on buying in this market, then roll into something from that. But this is not the market to buy and build in rate growth at 5% year over year, which people love to do. Like a broker will come to you with their OM. Oh yeah, it's going to be 5% compounded over the next 4 years. The purchases to be made out there really are undermanaged facilities. That's what you want to go after. You know, they don't have the tech. They don't have any of the stuff we're talking about. You want to make the bet that you know where the market is in terms of rates, and you know you can buy that facility and get up to those rates. And those are the home runs. But you got to be on the phone all the time, reaching out to brokers. You know, reaching out to brokers who even aren't self-storage brokers. Like the scrappier brokers are the guys that actually work the hardest for you a lot of times. But you got to like be lighting up your phone line calling, or if you're developing, you know, again, right now, like when we're underwriting deals, we're underwriting today's rates 3 years out. Like we're getting to today's rates in our pro forma.
I have a name for this, everybody, what he's talking about. Who knows what I call it when we're not talking rate increases or anything. We're just looking at the operations and the differential. What do I call that? Anybody? That's my margin of stupidity, and we're looking for the money on the table. Yep, good job.
Yeah.
It's what you can get today, not that future. That's what he's talking about. Very important in today's climate.
So there's that, and then a lot of people will look at deals, and you know, you have these underwriters out there, and they're underwriting 50 deals a week or whatever. So they're not looking at the zoning to see if you can upzone, or maybe you could get, you know, a parcel next door and do RV and maybe do some containers. Like those type of plays in this market right now are working. And a lot of times, everyone that you're bidding against isn't doing that level of research on the property and actually getting into the code, seeing if, hey, maybe I could take this 1 story and I could blow it out and do a 3-story here. And now it pencils, and now I could pay a little bit more and get the winning bid. Nobody's really looking at it like that. It's usually actually like the people are getting into the market for the first time that actually do that level of like research. But those are the 2 plays I'd like to see right now is A, I can beat this operator. I can come in, I can put $20,000 more, you know, down every month by raising rates, raising street rates, getting my occupancy up. We didn't talk about generating more leads, but knowing where your leads is coming from is getting much more important, and it's much more granular than it's been. But really just repositioning of an existing asset, I think, is the play right now. And again, if you're buying from like a sophisticated management company or something, you better know that you're better than them, or that you have an expansion opportunity or something that you can do to really differentiate yourselves, because it's going to be an uphill battle.
Travis.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dane. The opportunities today are the stores or portfolios that aren't at market rate, but have just been so poorly managed, or it's not even necessarily poorly managed. The owner could be very happy with the cash flow that they're making, and they're like, I don't need an extra $5,000 a month. I'm golfing 25 days out of the month as it is. So, but it's those opportunities that, yeah, I haven't sent out a rent increase in 12 months or 18 months or 5 years, that really provide the opportunities that are out there today. So, for example, I've been talking to an operator in Arizona for about the last 6 years. We'd meet a couple times a year, have lunch, talk shop, talk self-storage. She has 19 stores, owns them essentially free and clear. Doing okay, right? So she understands, though, that there are still opportunities in her facilities, and that they have some kind of antiquated operations, but she'd never really wanted to tackle that. And so after 6 years, she finally was like, I know I need to do all of these things, and I need to do smart entry, and I need to, upgrade my property management software, and I still don't want to do that. I'm going to hire you to do that. I'm going to hire you to go through the organization and logistics of changing my property management software, installing smart entry at all the facilities, do all of these things, and then I know that you can push my 90-cent rates up to $120 where the rest of $1.20 where the rest of the market is. And by doing all of those things and cutting some people out of the home office, I know that you can make me more money even though I'm paying you a management fee that I've never paid in the 30 years of owning a self-storage facility.
So you just got under contract?
Well, we started managing in July.
Oh, okay. So
And-
never mind.
and
I
so-
don't need to know who they are.
Yeah, and so today, actually, we just completed our last hummingbird onboard of the 19. So we did 19 hummingbird onboards in the last 2 weeks, and are in the process of installing Noki at all the facilities.
Love it. Lance?
Can I add just a
Oh, yeah,
bit of
go.
color on that too? And maybe Travis will throw out a different number, but a truly undermanaged property, because we do third-party management, you can add 20% income in 6 months by just coming in, making sure your unit's set up.
I hope so. That's my business model.
Yeah, right. Like, 20%, and that's only in like the first year. That's before you even really, or your first 6 months, before you even start to get traction. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the scale. And,
20%, you guys, that's gross.
yeah, on top line.
So think about that, what you're talking about, a net income, which creates the value. If you have a net income, which after debt and everything, let's call it 20%, right? The average facility is 40%, right? Margin, you say with debt, you're netting 20%. You increase that gross revenue by 20%. You doubled the value of the facility, not your money, because you used leverage. So you got a $3 million asset, you put $1 million down, you double the net income, it's now worth $6 million, your $1 million turned to $3 million.
Yeah, my rule, like if you're ever using a 5 cap, which I know a lot of markets aren't 5 cap, the easy thing is just times it by 20. So if we had 20,000 a month on 100, 90,000, a month, whatever, then we've added 240 a year. Let's call it 250. And you just times that by 20. I mean, you've added a significant amount of value. There's your deal right there. You could sell it in the first year.
And for first-time buyers, everybody, like you're dealing with facilities, like a lot of our members, they're buying $200,000 facilities, $800,000, $500,000 facilities. I say this a lot, but you can go buy facilities that are less than duplexes in most major markets. That is actually where what we're talking about here is the most powerful. We're not talking about going and buying a 80,000 multi-story storage facility in LA. No, that's a lot harder. Those are going to be institutional, right? So what they're talking about is very much for beginners. It's very powerful. Lance.
Yeah, so undermanaged is key in knowing that there's demand there, and having your toolkit ready for when you find that deal. Here's a hack on demand. I've never told this in front of an audience, and I've only done it for one friend.
Well, now I'm insulted.
It's really simple. It's not super simple, but effectively on an acquisition deal, I think it was in Minnesota we were looking at, and what we did is we spent $2 or $3 grand on PPC ads, and we really wanted to just see what the demand was in the market. It's a very quick, cheap market study to know demand. Even though we were sending business to somebody that we did not buy,
Yeah.
we determined that here was going to be the cost to get the eyeballs. We knew how good we could convert those people compared to the competition, and it was kind of all private equity, so they were sophisticated. And we could perform at that thing and figure out that this underperforming asset could come up, and we could do it with data, right? Real world data, live data, like that's people are clicking the button looking for space. And that's a beauty about our industry, right? This isn't like test driving a BMW or something. You don't go out and test drive a storage unit. It's the last thing in your mind. If you're out kicking the tires on a storage unit, you have
You're buying.
And the definition of a commodity, when I make this argument, is that it is a interchangeable need-based product in the consumer's mind with a like product. Just Google it. It's a simple definition, and then determine whether our empty 10 by 10s fit that.
Perfect. Okay, now we've talked briefly about the market. We've talked about entering the market, right? If you're a beginner, the most important things that we should be looking at. A lot of this is really focused around opportunity, put it that way. Now, a lot of discussions that need to be have had but aren't because they're not nearly as fun, is about risk and dangers. And I think it's really important to understand the risk and dangers of obviously any investment, but especially when you're either scaling or getting into the market. It doesn't matter if you have 10 facilities, if you have 2, if you are buying and growing, understanding those risks are just as important as the upside. So when we're looking at today, where do you see the most risk overall? If you're out and I'm trying to buy, or I have a facility, where do I see the most risk and how do I mitigate it? Dane, we'll start with you.
I mean, they say you can't forecast demand, but you can forecast supply, and there's tools to do that in this industry. Supply is scary, and you should run from it.
You can
when see too
forecast
much.
competition too,
Yeah.
meaning that's what's there.
Yeah, you can see what's there, and you can see what's coming in, and if I see a deal, and even if it's an undersupplied market, but I mean, I saw a market in LA where 1 million square feet were coming in 5 miles, because everyone's building a monster, right? That's scary. When I look at that, I go, rates ain't moving for 3 or 4 years here. Maybe they'll stay the same, maybe they'll go down a little bit. I don't think it's gonna be catastrophic, but you're not gonna have any rate growth in that market for a while. Yeah. So that's the number one thing that you wanna look at is, hey, is this market, like barriers to entry is our best friend.
Yeah, don't care about rate growth. It's meaningless now today. Care about rent growth.
Yeah, yeah. But you ultimately know it's gonna take some time, and honestly, if you're gonna lease up a significant amount of square footage in this market, it's one thing if you're stabilized, you can really drive your revenue with, you know, existing customer rental increases and by playing the games that we've been talking about, you know, dropping rates on some units, raising them on other, and getting everybody with ECRIs later. But a lease up it's a real challenging market to lease up a big facility right now. It's not as easy as it was.
This is an actual model and strategy. It's important to understand this. And we've talked about, a lot of you guys know that we're building in Surprise, Arizona, and there was a bunch of competitors that were looking like they were coming in and they were going to build. So what we did is we just said, oh, we'll just build 250,000 net rentable square feet, and I am going to so supply that market that by the time that they come in, it is an entirely different market. But I've already beat them to the game. I already have all the tenants, everything else. I'm already fortified, and I'm essentially going to destroy it. I'm going to destroy that market. I've also done that with other people. We had a facility that came and built, they were building next to us. And as we were negotiating and looking at that, we thought, we own this, the facility we'd owned for 10, 15 years. I mean, borderline free and clear. We got like 3 million, it's 200,000 square feet. We go, just drop rates 60%. And then we'll buy his facility. This is an actual strategy that is deployed in all markets and all landscapes you're trying to manipulate, because the people that are there have access, they have an advantage. This is a real thing. So it's not just supply coming on, how it's coming on and who's doing it. Be careful.
That's I think the most important part.
Go ahead.
Travis or me?
Go
Okay,
ahead.
so I want to know the competition. I want to know inside and out. Like I was helping Travis on a deal recently that he got into, and it's like he's got this beautiful. He builds really beautiful facilities. He's building this beautiful facility, and all of a sudden, guess who's coming there and there? Like public and extra, right? So now your strategy changes instantaneously as soon as you know that, and you want to plan for it, because you're going to run this very differently than you would have had that been, you know, Joe's Storage and Fred's Storage, or maybe a different private equity firm that's in there, and you know their strategy, right? So you're trying to figure out, am I going to blow up my paid advertising to the moon because of this, or am I going to blow my rates to the ground and manage it with tech because of this?
Storage is not real estate, it is a business. Bingo. This is exactly what he's talking about. It's shocking to, I think, all of us, how many people don't look at that. They don't look at their competitors, it's just straight line supply. They don't really look at, they think, oh no, everybody just does whatever's normal, like multifamily or something like that, gets oversupplied, we'll all kind of stop. This is not
A lot
how
of you
that
are
works.
looking at tertiary markets too, which this sort of simplifies rather quickly. And that's, I've been pushing tertiaries for like 15 years, and it's, you know, people I think are woken up to it now, but they're fantastic markets. I mean, they're great opportunities. This is a tertiary market right here in Rocks.
Two small things to add, and I feel like you kind of probably already covered this, so it might be redundant, is we know insurance costs can come out of the blue. I've seen facilities have a $14,000 insurance bill turn into a $200,000 insurance bill.
Yep.
Due to the fire danger in California. Then you got the Florida coast, right? It's a real problem out there for them.
Wipes
right now.
out
Real
profit.
estate taxes in Texas.
Real estate, a lot of people, go to, what they see is like less tax states like Tennessee, like we have 10 properties in Tennessee. And you're like, well, real estate taxes are gonna be reasonable there, but so many people have moved to some of these areas that the cities are bait and switching on these taxes. So
Yeah.
you can even look at historicals and things can change. So you wanna, we use an expert to validate taxes before we go in, but those are two pretty big line items that seem benign. You want your insurance quote going in, right, from whoever your broker is, and you wanna have somebody look over your shoulder on the taxes and make sure you've gotten those dialed in. Because those are, especially if you have a small facility, those could blow you up pretty quick.
So we've hit on supply overall, competition, the two main expenses, insurance and taxes. Everybody in here that has storage facilities, and all of us have felt that. It's not fun. Travis, what else should we be looking at?
I think the biggest thing from a risk standpoint is preparedness. And Lance mentioned one of our most recently opened facilities and our neighbors. Mike Tyson says, you can have the best plan ever until you get punched in the face.
Just like,
And then it goes out the window, right? Or something like that. It's not a direct quote, but
That's how I felt running with the Bulls. It was all fun until the first one caught me.
But you open a brand new facility and the economy changes, nothing that you'd modeled, you get an extra space in the public, changing the way that they are pricing units to a very aggressive model, and that goes to what Lance was mentioned, that it's not rate anymore, it's rent management, because rates are short-term prices that we put on the units to get people in the door.
Rent is the new promotion for two of the publics.
you guys have seen those graphs, those spreads, those historical that I showed you, that historically they were relatively close, and they have diverged astronomically in the last 2 years. And you guys remember we talked about that's not going back in the box. They're not the same rate. Street rates and in-place rates are not the same rates. And they're not going to be. Don't expect that. That's so important.
So I've been writing about these since January, and
Where can people find that?
So, just so happens I brought this
Oh, that's Mr. September
this magazine
right there.
with Mr.
Could you get a
September on the
better
cover.
cover on there?
That's a good magazine.
You should definitely subscribe. Shop.modernstoragemedia.com. It's $1 a month to start, and $4 after that. Anyways, I digress. But the plan was not in the original model for that facility to deal with this aggressive new pricing strategy. And so we had to be flexible and have the ability to adapt our operation to quickly change to match what the competition is doing. And so just a tip that I will give to everyone, and people look at me sometimes kind of weird when I say this, but I have a unit at all of my competitors' facilities. I go rent a unit. I go experience their customer experience so I can see how it compares to mine. I really do it because I want to see how long it takes for them to send me a rent increase, so that when I start implementing similar practices at my facilities, I can honestly tell customers, well, they're doing the exact same thing, or worse, right down the street. How do I know that? We have a unit there.
Yep.
You should all do that. If you're going into a market, you're building whatever, you should be experienced. Same thing you would do to go to any store or any other business. You would go and look at your competition. And that what Travis is saying is, it's hard to express the importance of this. How many of you guys have changed how you're operating in the last 2 years because of this? I mean, we have.
The last 2 months.
I mean, we went into markets where street rates and in-place rates, they didn't diverge or anything else. All of a sudden, you had this shift in interest rates, the publics and a lot of the big REITs, they so dramatically changed course overnight. We had rates that went from $200 to $60, like immediately. And now try going to a bank and explaining that $60 rate is a promotion. It's actually $200. The bank's going to go, what are you talking about? No, it's $60.
And that's kind of insane because we don't have data in this industry, and that the banks, buy into this, and it's even a lot of the Wall Street analysts can't figure it out.
Can't figure it out.
It's crazy.
Now,
So,
one thing I will say that has kind of saved us in dealing with this change is it required the technology to be able to keep up with the REITs and with the technology that they have in place. And so because we were partnered with Tenant, we were able to reach out, and I'm like, Lance, we got a problem here. And we need to build a way so that my team can't do this manually to keep track of every individual unit and what price they are versus what the guys down the street are charging. And we need to automate and systematize this process as soon as we can to be able to keep up with what we're dealing with.
This is a big topic, by the way.
And
this is
so
something we need to be prepared for.
We worked with the team at Tenant and Dane's input and AJ's input and experience from other operators on the platform.
Well, it was
built out.
2 years ago, I flew down to Southern California. I got Lance, and I went over and grabbed Dane, and Travis was down there meeting with us. I'm like, guys, I got a problem. It's a big, big problem. And I was like, we have these facilities in these markets. It's changing so dramatically. We can't figure out what's really happening here between our in-place, on our marketing, because we were changing things. And we all sat down, we started looking, we had Hummingbird, they all jumped in.
And we're just about to launch the result of that initial meeting too.
And it was big, and we all had to jump in. The whole team had to jump in and say, let's figure this out, right? Let's work through this, let's figure it. And they all did, and we figured it out, right? And that's one of the benefits of being here, though. You guys get to hear what the struggles we've all went through, and then literally built products to solve these things.
And understand why it's happening too, because
Yes.
It's really simple. Search demand dropped. Cost per acquisition went up. The REITs are a bunch of friggin' companies run by bankers now. It's a banker mentality, and it's a Wall Street investor mentality. They don't give a crap. Scorched earth, get the next quarter's revenue. And then technology allowed them to do it. That's it. So those four things. And they all happened at the exact same time.
And so it changed overnight. Now, the discrepancy, though, can be big because we don't see this in a lot of markets. So who in this room is either in or looking at tertiary markets without REITs? Raise your hand. There we go.
Yeah.
Us too, okay? So when you look at those markets, the discrepancy between street rate and in-place rates, we did a webinar. Who was on the webinar when I showed you the difference between the pricing structures? You were there, and it was like, we went into a third-tier market. All of the facilities were roughly within a $2 range of the same. Then we went to a big city, and there was a $300 difference on the same unit. That is the difference. We're talking, when we say a $300 difference, we're talking about a $400 unit. And so you went in one market, everyone was $72, all the competitors in that market. The other market, you had $100 to $400. So the market that you're in will drive this, right? The competitors, and that's why that's important. REITs, right? Technology, large private equity, they're coming in. That's where you see that. So knowing your market and knowing your competition. We just don't really see that in third-tier markets. Why? Because there's no driving force that's doing it. That's why it can get very confusing because of what Dane, well, everybody said here first. The markets that we see are radically different today. We went through a 4-year period of time where everybody was 96% full, everybody's raised rates. We've now gone back to normal, how it should be. It should have never been like that. That was wrong. Where we have inventory, where we have vacancy, new people are building, we have competition. Once that cleared out, as Warren Buffett says, You don't know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out. The tide went out, right? And all of a sudden you're like, wow, these guys are in trouble. These guys are doing this. And that happened a lot in big growth markets. So the different market you're in will dramatically change the competition, the output. That's how it always used to be. Storage is, I mean, how big is your guys' average market? Let's go. In your markets, which are predominantly Southern California, correct?
Huge.
Huge. What is your market radius for customers that you are really focusing on?
3 is the outside, like, limit, really. I mean, you end up with outliers.
Of course,
but you know,
80% of the tenant base.
probably 2 miles is more realistic.
Dane, what do you say?
I mean, I haven't done something recently, and I've only done it on a few properties, but I want to say like about 70% of our tenants are within 3 miles. But that's going to change. If you're in a tertiary market and you're the only guy in town because, you know, the city doesn't want anyone to build there.
I have one that's 5-6 miles.
Yeah, you could be pulling people in, especially if you're more of a destination.
And the storage type, right?
Yeah.
You know, vehicle storage is going to pull further.
Yeah.
Right? Or it may be en route.
RV, if it's indoor, it's like 40 miles, 50 miles
huge.
you're pulling people from.
Travis, what about you? What's your average radius of your core tenants? We're talking
2 to 3 miles.
2 to 3 miles.
And yeah, you've got your outliers like we've been saying, but Lance just made me think of something that, you know, the type is important.
Can you say that again?
No, don't. We don't
It's just
do that.
live, it's not recorded. The type of facility that you're talking about also can impact your radius. So if you have a multi-story air-conditioned facility in a town that has none, your radius just got
Your
8
demand
miles.
and supply is totally different.
Right.
You just change.
Even
the
if you
complete
have
economics.
4 single-story drive-ups within a mile of you,
Yeah,
your radius, theirs might be 2 to 3, yours
exactly.
is a completely different customer base.
This is where it comes back down to the competition and guys, products and customers.
Yeah.
I don't say tenants, right, and I don't say units. They're products and they're customers, and that's what I'm talking about. You can go in and build a facility into a town that has 15 square feet per capita,
20.
but your
3 or
square
4
feet per
here.
capita is 0. People don't understand that. You can go build a facility that has 15 square feet per capita, but your net effective competition is nothing because they don't have that type.
Yeah.
And that dramatically changes how we approach and look at these. And that changes the radius that you're in.
Well, going back to the whole de-risking, I mean, you just kind of hit it on the head. It's like, you know, what product type is this market lacking, and can I introduce that product type?
Well, that comes back to competition, and we got a lot of tertiary, probably got a lot of NASCAR fans in here, right? Like, you know, if you're going to bet on a car, what motor are they running? Like, that's when I'm looking at competition. I'm looking at what motor are they running. And if it's public, I know which motors they're running. Extra, I know which motors. Any private equity, I know which motors they're running.
And this is why in smaller markets, we don't see variance because it's all the same motor, right? Now, when we look at this, this is so important that who's seen our office building that we just got done converting? Have you guys seen that YouTube video stuff where we are building it, and it's been a long, arduous process.
It's the one that's been going on for 9 years.
Like 15 years. And so it's, when you look at that project, though, in that city, if you went and looked at that city, most of the city has 20-plus square feet per capita of storage. In some parts, it has 36 square feet per capita. 36. The area that we are in this area, this downtown-type corridor or whatnot, has 2. If I drive 4 miles, I'm going to 30 square feet plus per capita. Yet if I drive 4 miles the opposite direction where I am, there's 2. That is the difference in a 5-8 mile range. It's really localized, and the competitors you have in that 3 mile, the type of storage and how much there is will determine everything that we're talking about here. Those are your 3 things, okay? When you get into smaller markets, you don't have the diversity, competition, you don't have the square footage that we're talking about, and then you don't have the pricing and the technology, right? So then you have much more evened out rates, rate management, and trends. So it's widely different in one city, more or less a state. Lots of people say, What states do you want? Outside California, we're okay with everyone, all the states. We just don't want to be in California. And so other than that, though, we're okay with everything. It's really localized. It's hard to say because I'm like, I can find cities that it's like they've had huge building booms, but then you have a neighborhood that has 3 square feet per capita. And I know me and Dane were talking about this. They were building in a state, in a city, I won't say. I don't want your dad mad at me. So, where there was a lot of construction and everything going on. And I went, and all 3 of us went. We went and toured a property. And it was shocking at that property that they were building, both quality, everything we're talking about, it was completely different. It was as if they were in a totally different market. And that brings us to our next question here. Where do you find the most opportunity in storage today? Travis, we'll start with you.
So in my travels, we've come across some weird markets, places that have more self-storage than I have ever seen before, and in 20 years of this business, I can't even begin to explain why those facilities exist. Do I still want to buy one so I have an excuse to travel to that place? Maybe, but that's just a tax plan. That's something else. I have been most effective in, my big fish in a small pond mentality and staying close to home and the properties that I know. The first facility I built, I drove by that land for 2 or 3 years every day. It was right around the corner from my house. And I drove by it for 2 or 3 years and was like, that'd be a good spot for a storage facility. That'd be a good spot for a storage facility.
Don't follow that model.
And finally, I said, well, I guess we're going to have to build a storage facility here. And we did. That model that built the facility of the year in this magazine before we owned it, et cetera, et cetera. So don't follow that model. Don't be good at, things. I'm a big believer in stick with what you know. And
I love it. That's great advice.
I'm going to let Lance go first. I want to think
Go
a little
for
bit
it.
longer on that one.
Lance. Wise decision, by the way.
So,
Go ahead, Lance.
really the biggest difference you can make, and I'm gonna say the simple words again, but it's not that simple. Offer acceptance consideration, meaning, where am I gonna place my service in front of the customer, and how are they going to select an offer and give me the consideration so that the deal is done? And that's all tech now. Like, your consumer screens are tech, your management screens are tech, all the tech that puts those things together, right? And I know that sounds self-serving, but I own a lot of real estate. And if I didn't have the ability to do the things I'm doing and the vision and where I'm going to, I'm not even there yet, right? I'm just still on the journey. I wouldn't want to be in this game, because I wouldn't be performing very high. So look at the tools to maximize what you're doing once you have a property. And if you're developing your first property or buying your first property, have a plan of how you're going to. Don't wait until you get it, right? Like, if you're going fishing, you don't show up to the Northwest coast and go, okay, I need a pontoon boat. That's a bad plan, right? You need a certain type of boat. You need a certain type of gear. If you're going to eat fish, you need a certain way to handle and care for them to get them home, right? You're going to
Not
think
that Lance
about
would know. He doesn't catch anything when he
Yeah,
fishes.
when you see him with the fish, that's called a hook and hand. I hook and I hand it to him. And, that's okay though, everybody has to start somewhere.
Dan.
I hate to keep beating the same drum, but I mean, if you can, and small operators can operate on even a higher capacity than larger operators sometimes because all they're focused on 1 or 2 properties, right?
I completely agree.
Yeah.
So if you're operating at a high caliber, I'd be knocking down, if you have the time, knocking down the door of all those family-owned properties around your area or where you want to be, because the gap between the haves and the have-nots is growing, and it's growing faster than it's ever grown in the past.
We had our inner circle day here. We members, we were talking about what the competitive advantage was. He lives in close to the Gulf in Texas, and he was like, there's these small towns. He's like, my competitive advantage is I know these markets like nobody else does. There's facilities here. There's not big players coming in, and we really can't. I mean, that competitive advantage, some people overlook it, or they go, oh yeah. When you're dealing, especially with money management things, that's a huge competitive advantage, which we, just had 2 people talk about, that they know those markets and understand it in ways that money allocators, people that don't live in those markets don't know and won't know. They're not going to do it. Those are huge advantages. One more thing here, and then we've got we're going on to.
Can I throw one?
I want to add on to that.
Wait. You each got, with 10 seconds, go.
So information happens quick now. I got in this business in the late 90s in LA and Orange County. It took 20 years to build out that market. If I were starting today and there were opportunity like that, the same amount of opportunity would take 3 years to build that market out. Information is available. Things happen quick. That deal he drove by for 3 years with analysis paralysis wouldn't exist in today's market because somebody else would have driven by and go, I'll do that. So be prepared to execute.
Dane.
I have to kind of second what you guys said too. I really do think there's going to be some like tertiary, there is today, tertiary and secondary market opportunities. Like I come to think of it when I'm thinking about our markets where it's secondary, tertiary, we don't really, I'm playing a completely different pricing game there. I'm just the leader. And then everyone follows me. Like I'm actually driving the market up. And if you can get into a market where a REIT's not going to be interested to be there, but it still has growth, I think that's like the best position you can be in.
Love it.
If you are starting out today, I've got bad news for you. The name Public Storage is already taken. The name Extra Space is already taken. Most of the good names are already taken. And you're not going to be likely to build up a portfolio large enough to compete with any of those big name operations. Much like hotels, you wouldn't buy a hotel today and call it AJ's Hotel and expect it to show up anywhere on the first 40 pages of Google. That is where the industry is headed. That is why we created Store Local Storage. That is why all of this guy's stores and all of this guy's stores and the stores I manage for that guy are all Store Local Storages. Because they understood that even though Dane had 30 plus stores as Storage Direct and AJ had 20 plus stores as Key Lock Storage, those portfolios were still not going to be big enough to move the needle for Google when it comes to showing up where it matters on the internet.
I thought he went to Janice and realized there were no keys.
Well, that helps too.
So I think that what he's talking about here is that there is domain authority is an opportunity. At the end of the day, 85% of our customers come from online. So your domain authority, whether you're placing or not, is the difference of whether you get customers or not. The ability to compete online, when you're dealing with a Public Storage or Extra Space, you just can't do it when you're talking about, I mean, you need to be hundreds of stores to even remotely think about or get close. So what we do is we have our co-op, the leased out name, right? We use and brand, and that shoots us up in the rankings to compete with the national guys. We own our stores, we operate them, everything else, but we have that shared name. Now we dominate those markets and can compete. That's exactly what it is. It's our competitive advantage.
Travis,
And
it's
yeah,
here.
and
Nope,
cheap-
you guys are done. You guys are done. All right. We now are going to take questions from YouTube because we are obviously live. We have questions coming in. So what questions do we got, Nate?
Yes. First off, Travis, the internet is alive. They want more Mike Tyson impersonations, please. So it's just nonstop on the feed. So the internet demands it. First question is from William Draper. If you have an additional space on your storage property, how can you manipulate that to help provide additional income or gain more customers in today's economy? And in parentheses, it says that's land space. So it sounds like you might have some vacant
Additional
land on his
space.
property.
Yep.
How can we maximize the value on that?
All right, you guys got 15 seconds apiece. Go ahead.
It's a question of speed. So if you want absolute fast as possible, pave it, do parking.
Yeah.
Lowest rent per square foot option available. If you want the longest version, you put a new building on it. Entitlements, building plans, et cetera, et cetera. The right and quickest and most effective answer is a mass unit or something like that from Janus, where you're expanding additional self-storage units that are built on site, set right on the ground, personal property, depreciable, CSSI, bam, you're renting units.
Dane?
I think he just covered everything, really.
Lance?
So-
Yeah, I'd agree with that, but don't always think of parking as the lowest, because I can tell you that if you are aggressive and you've got the right market, your parking rents can be outrageous.
Awesome. All right, next question.
Okay, next question. Is RV storage with customers coming from 40 miles, is that an indicator of an underserved need?
Travis?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. Yeah, I don't need to go much further than that.
Everybody agree?
Yes.
with that? If you're attracting that much, that is a signal of lack of supply and inventory, because they won't pass and drive to go to you if you have 10 options in between. So nobody wants to do that.
That is all from the internet. So
Wonderful, because we're almost out of time. So what I want you to take away here from this podcast, from what you've heard, is first of all, storage is returning back to our normal. And when we say normal, and as far as occupancy goes, the high normal, okay? We're not even like, when most of us got started, we
We're
never
above-
saw
above-
90s.
above normal.
Yes, above normal. So we're returning that, but which we agree is the new normal. That new normal includes the disparities in markets, square footage, products, like kind of what we talked about, right? And then competition. This, everyone, is the opportunity. If there was not disparities in competition, in markets, in square footage, in products, in technology and operations, it's just this is what the market is. You're competing on money, right? And you're competing on speed. But outside that, there isn't. That's why there's opportunity. That in turn, though, is also why there are risks, because you need to know and understand those. The market cycle that we're in includes vacancy, which is normal. Understanding the products, right, and the customers, the units and the tenants, the products and the customers, how those match, and then back to the basics. How do I find them? How do I get them in? How do I service them? Is the name of the game. You remember that when we started out, I had a simple business model. It included 3 things and 3 things only. That was, we were going to make people pay their bills, we were going to answer the phone, and then let them know that we were there. That killed. And it still does in so many markets for all of the things that we just talked about here. The higher up in markets and competition you go, the more you need to utilize and be better, because there's less margin of error. This is something that I think is going to continue. We all believe it will. This is something you can overcome even with one store, even in competitive landscape, due to the resources that have been developed, frankly, from this panel up here over the last 10 years, working tirelessly to bring the advantages of the REITs down low. And that's why they're here, because they are experts in competitive advantage for individual small operators. You guys know that has been our mission, store local, right? Collectiveness, to have a brand that we can all share to compete. Tenant, it was to democratize data and technology. Open data, we own our data, it's shared, those resources go down. And store local, and self-storage income, education. All the knowledge of the REITs and what you're seeing down to you. With those guys, with those tools, it really does provide you not an opportunity to compete, but to thrive and dominate. So thank you guys very much for being here. We appreciate it. Thank you guys for your questions and your attendance. Appreciate it.
Let's show them some love. Let's show them some love. All right, we're offline. You can stop now. You're fine. You're fine. We're offline. I'm just kidding. You guys did great. You guys did great. Sharp-looking crowd. I'm still nervous. Still nervous. Hey, you guys did wonderful. The internet loves you guys. Lots of comments about